The simplest way to describe what marketing really is when you distill it down to its essence is understanding what the right message is to take to the right person at the right time on the right channel, which is mostly where the digital side of this comes in. We say then on the right channel because we're choosing to use internet-based channels, the social media platforms, email, text, things of this nature, even programmatic television on like your Roku TV would be an example, or YouTube advertising. All of these different channels are ways we can disseminate the right message to the right person at the right time. And so ultimately, marketing boils down at its most base level to having people emotionally respond to something that they see that helps them understand, you see me, you know me, you understand my pain, and you're trying to help me solve it, so that then their logic can kick in after they have the emotional response, and you work them through the buying decision of why your product or service is needed.
Hello and welcome back to the Be Unbound podcast. I'm your co-host, David Rethemeyer.
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brush.
And it's been a little bit since we've had guests on the show. We've had some of our other fellow Unbound coworkers come on with us, and we've had some fantastic conversations with them, but it's been a little bit since we've had special guests come in, and so we're delighted to be getting that going again here shortly, and I think that we've got a really fantastic one to kick us off this time around. So, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about Trey and why the audience should be excited to listen to this episode.
Yeah, we're really excited to introduce you to Trey Sheneman. Trey has a fairly remarkable career in marketing and digital marketing specifically. He's somebody we worked with professionally at Unbound, and in fact, he teaches our digital marketing track for our Unbound students. Trey knows a lot about marketing. He has a very successful career, and he has a lot of knowledge about it, and he shares that knowledge. We're going to talk about his podcast and an upcoming book that he's working on, so you can find out more about it. But if you've ever been interested in marketing, what it is, particularly if you're interested in marketing as a career, or if you just want to get a little insight into, everybody seems to be talking about marketing and digital marketing. We joked around before we started the recording, and we kidded around a little bit more. It's like we have a lot of people say, I want to do digital marketing. At some level, they think that means I get to play on social media all day. And there is an aspect of that that's not completely wrong, but Trey does a great job of doing two things here, breaking down what it means to have a career in marketing. But then, and this is a part that I think is more interesting, we spend some time talking about what it's like to have a good career in marketing. And by good, I don't mean successful. I mean a career that helps other people. And this is important because, as we touched on in this episode when we talk about here, this is not just a career opportunity. This is an opportunity to change the world. This is an opportunity to serve other people. This is an opportunity to minister to other people in some really important ways. And we get into that in the conversation, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with all of you. Welcome, Trey, to the Be Unbound podcast. You are not a stranger to being on a video call with David and I, but I don't know that we've ever recorded one that we're going to then make public before this. So this is kind of a fun change. And we're delighted to introduce you to our audience. Our audience doesn't know it, but they already know you because you've helped us for some time now with a bunch of our marketing work and things like that. And so if you found out about Unbound, in fact, if you found out about this podcast, there's a fair chance that Trey has something to do with that. But Trey is the owner and founder and chief ringable neck for Herald Marketing, and does not only Herald, but has a really pretty significant career in marketing and the digital marketing space. And we're looking forward to picking your brain about that. So welcome, Trey. We're glad you're here.
Man, I'm very fond of the work that the two of you guys are trying to do in this era, in this generation, and helping people understand that they got options. And that they don't have to just take the one main option that the loudest voices try and shove down their throats, that they can actually be in charge of their futures and live dynamic lives on their own terms. And I'm excited to talk about how digital marketing has been that vehicle for me over the last 15 or 16 years. And I'm just grateful for everything you guys stand for and what you're trying to do and the alternative paths that you're presenting to people. And it is my pleasure and honor to be on the podcast today.
Well, Trey, we can go lots of different ways with this, but I think for all of us, and we talked about this briefly before the recording started, we're recording this about a week after the Charlie Kirk assassination. It's had an impact on all of us. And frankly, almost everything we do all of a sudden has this extra dimension to it. And, all of us have been passionate about what we do, but there's just an almost feeling like a call to arms here recently in terms of, you say digital marketing and people think career. And all of a sudden, the last, 7 days or so, I think digital marketing and I think the ability to articulate ideas that are necessary.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the ability to help people build useful, meaningful lives. And, if you touch on something like this, it's like, well, you immediately jump to political messaging and all those kinds of things. That's not unimportant. But actually, I'm more interested in the ability for people to live useful, important, meaningful lives where they're contributing to their community, they're contributing to their families, to the churches, and things like that. And in this world, being able to do that means being able to have your voice heard, and that just defaults to some sort of marketing, and especially digital marketing. So with that as kind of the framework, Trey, before we start, give us a little bit of your background, because right now that's what you're doing in terms of running your own business, but you've had a pretty significant background in this. So give us a little bit of a
Yeah.
career sketch here.
It's been a fun ride. So for the first 4.5, 5 years of my professional career was actually in private Christian education. I went to Liberty University, went to seminary there, thought that I was always going to be a high school Bible teacher and coach, and I did that for almost 5 years. And in that last year of being in education, my wife and I decided I met my wife through that ministry, and she was working in the middle school, and we had decided we want to start having a family. And make a long story short, we knew that for at least the first few years, she was going to try and stay at home and be a mom, and I needed to figure out a way to replace her income. And so I had started trying to figure out things that I could do around my day schedule, which was 12 hours a day, 5 days a week between school and coaching. And the only thing I could really find out was internet marketing. It was really in the early stages of internet marketing. The first kind of internet marketing that I looked into was called affiliate marketing, which basically means you build funnels that represent other people's products and you get commissions on the way by. Affiliate marketing is still a big thing today. And so I started working in building those funnels and found, I would argue, some pretty instant success in a lot of ways. And then the unexpected happened, and through the back end of the recession in 2009, 2010, our school went through a massive de-enrollment phase, and my wife and I both ended up losing our jobs through a series of events. And so internet marketing was kind of the only horse I had to ride, if you know what I'm saying. My hand was a little bit forced. I would have never chosen, I don't believe I would have ever chosen this path. I say the path chose me in a lot of ways. The Lord opened a door that, many people would say no man could shut. He was just like, go for this. And it's been a really special experience. So the quick story is 2010 to 2014, I started and grew an agency to multiple employees, multiple millions of dollars of revenue, had private equity backers kind of jump in on that one. Had a little small exit, 2014 to 2017, joined an even bigger agency in downtown Atlanta, what in our industry you would kind of call like a blue chip agency. So we were working with brands like SunTrust Bank and Coca-Cola and the Atlanta Dream, which is the WNBA franchise in Atlanta. So it's bigger clients, more services. So I had about 8 years of agency experience. Then I spent 6 years being the head of marketing inside of organizations, particularly in the Christian kind of public figure space. So worked for John Maxwell for a little bit and worked for Dave Ramsey for almost 4 years, primarily on the Financial Peace University side of that business. Then I worked for a guy named Brennan Burchard. And then I started Herald a couple of years ago. So Herald, we started because I kind of felt like I had an insider seat to the best of both worlds, like what really good, agile, effective agency work could look like, especially going into the AI age, which I'm excited to talk about a little bit on this podcast. But then also being able to view that insider's experience from having worked for larger companies and what their expectation is and how those brands genuinely want to insource most of that work, but sometimes the best talent is outsourced. And how do you kind of bridge that gap? And we ultimately have now helped over 100 companies in the last 3 years sort of install a way to think about marketing that I believe is the best of both worlds, as well as the third world, which is the AI world that has now, proliferated faster than any of us could do. And I will tell you that comment that you made before you asked me that question about, using this as a platform. I think we got to keep in mind, especially as believers, I know we're all believers, especially as believers, that the enemy is called the prince of the power of the air. And I think we are in the dimensional phase of the spiritual battle that's going on, where that power of the air is being realized more and more and more every day. And so I believe in the digital marketing space, I see the work that I do as more redemptive now, more than it ever has been before, of us using platforms that the enemy means for evil in every sense of the word. We see that definitely the last 7-8 days for sure. It's like, how can we go back and be a kingdom reckoning force in that same space, not shy away, sneak back, but actually press in a really healthy way using the channels for the good of the Lord in an effective manner, in a respectful manner too. So I am feeling a call to arms. That's the phrase you used, to really help rise up a vanguard in the next generation that sees these platforms as tools to be used to expand the kingdom of God, not to run and hide away from.
So often we run to young people and, they're not sure what the next step is. And at some level that insecurity has to do with lack of a bigger picture. And what is really interesting, fascinating in the last 7 days is the bigger picture problem doesn't seem to be a big problem anymore. And so now there's a lot more people talking about mechanics. And this is why I'm kind of interested, I'm very interested to talk to you about, Trey. And this is a question that I really want to get answered because I think we get this all the time. So I use your space as an interesting example. I tell people, lots of people say they want to do marketing and they're not really sure what marketing is, but they think that, sometimes they say that because there's money there. And sometimes they say that because they think there's some ways to use creativity. And as we were joking earlier, sometimes they say that because they think it means they get to play on Instagram all day, right? So, I mean, there's a different various things there. But I tell people, look, we live and die on good marketing. And we don't hire anybody who does marketing. If you say you have a marketing degree from a 4-year university, I don't really want to talk to you. And it's not because I've got some sort of weird bias. It's because that means to me that you spent 4 years learning from people that were outdated before you started school. And in the 4 years that you were taking the marketing program, all kinds of stuff happened that they're not paying attention to because they don't have any skin in the game. They're just teaching. And so they're trying to teach something that was outdated, before you started, that got more outdated every year that you were in. And when you come out and you go to work for me, I basically have to retrain you for everything. So this is one of those interesting places where this is a definite learn by doing. And so, of course, Trey, for the audience to know, Trey teaches our digital marketing track for Unbound. And so he's the primary instructor there and teaches our students. And so I would tell people, look, if you want somebody that knows how to do marketing, hire one of our students to spend even a year, let alone 3, with Trey in the digital marketing track here. And I guarantee you they know better practical marketing than anybody graduating from any kind of 4-year school, including an Ivy. But that begs the question, when we're talking about marketing, and Trey specifically, we talk about digital marketing, people are like, they know what that is, but they don't, right? So what does that mean? So if you just take a little bit of a moment here and say, hey, it is a call to arms. There is important work to be done. These platforms need to be redeemed. But what does it mean to be a marketer, to be a digital marketer? If I'm going to, get a job doing digital marketing, what exactly does that look like?
Yeah, I think the simplest way to describe what marketing really is, when you just boil it down to its essence, is understanding what the right message is to take to the right person at the right time on the right channel, which is mostly where the digital side of this comes in. But marketing, you don't put the digital modifier on and just say marketing is right message, right person, right time. We say then on the right channel, because we're choosing to use internet-based channels, the social media platforms, email, text, things of this nature, even programmatic television on like your Roku TV would be an example, or YouTube advertising. All of these different channels are ways we can disseminate the right message to the right person at the right time. And so ultimately, marketing boils down at its most base level to having people emotionally respond to something that they see that helps them understand, you see me, you know me, you understand my pain, and you're trying to help me solve it, so that then their logic can kick in after they have the emotional response, and you work them through the buying decision of why your product or service is the answer. That is marketing's role. And we do this in the digital track. We're trying to explore the ways that good copywriting, good storytelling, good messaging always wins, whether it's in person, online, in a book. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you can match narrative to pain and solution and bridge that gap, and then learn a couple of channels that you can just use with, like learning how to run Facebook ads as an example, or learning how to be a really great email marketer. Like, if you can pair those 2 or 3 hard skills with really 3 hard skills with the soft skills of like knowing the Lord and understanding the spiritual implications of things and having a genuine bent towards humankind, growing and improving rather than suffering, which is what the enemy wants to do. If you can just learn to handle those 3 or 4 skills and spend 12, 15, 18 months going deep in those skills, you can unlock a career. And honestly, Jonathan, like, you can unlock a career now more than ever, especially if you're okay with using AI to expand your output and the implications of your output. I mean, you can, I know of several, kingdom people, one person businesses right now that are doing 2 and 3 and 4 times the income I was doing when I first started out in the industry 15 or 16 years ago, because they've paired these handful of 3 or 4 skills with AI, and they understand right message, right person, right time as the crux of what great marketing is.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. In just like the crux of it is really just understanding that like you have to deliver the right message to the right people, and it's just very, very broad and like how that can actually work. Like I remember first getting into like my career in marketing and realizing that like I didn't think for a long time that that was going to be the kind of thing that I liked, because I thought it was much more of like a visual, like design and writing sort of thing. I thought you had to be a lot more creative, and there's some creativity that's like necessary no matter what. But like I thought that like as a more technical person, technically minded person, I didn't think I was going to have much of a chance to like really get into that. And it turns out that that's extremely useful in marketing. And I think really it just comes down to like just about any sort of like hard skill set that you have, you can find a like division and a channel of marketing, the way that you put it, Trey. Like you can find an avenue that you could use it in, as long as you have that core value of like, how do we make sure that the people who need what I am wanting them to have can see it and can get access to it and are able to learn about it in a way that is actually helpful to them.
Yeah, it's we used to joke and say it's equal parts art and science. The truth of the matter, for a very significant period of time, let me say it this way, it was way more art for a while. The Mad Men days, the Don Draper days, like that era of ad agency work and everything was way more art than it really was science. Then in the digital age, it moved way more science and math and technicality and targeting and all the things for an era. But man, since 2021, it has gone back to being a little more art than it is science in a lot of ways, which comes down to messaging, being able to fine tune messaging, which is that is the center of the concentric circles of marketing, comes down to your core message at the middle. And so we can, if Herald, the name of our company is Messenger, like that is the purpose of what we're trying to build and teach and train, is what people come to us, because distribution, television, social, email, those are just all distribution points of some semblance of a core message, a core offer. And I think we're moving into an era where really good marketing focuses more on the core message and the core offer, and learning how to do that, because the distribution, it's not a perfect, marriage anymore, but it is a lot easier in today's world than it was even 5 or 10 or 15 years ago to figure out where those people are, to do the research on where your consumer is, and then to deliver that message to them. So yeah, I think I agree with everything that you're saying.
So Trey, just to take an interesting example here, tell me something that you bought that you wanted or needed that was over $500 in the last couple of months. Just anything.
This is an Oura ring, and so it's right at $500. I bought it in store, but I did 30, 45 days of solid research online about it before I went and actually purchased it in the Best Buy. But it's essentially a biometric ring that helps me track my sleep and my steps and all the things.
So, and that's actually a really cool example. So when people ask about marketing, I think that there's still, like, we have the same problem if anybody talks about sales, and Trey, you do a lot of sales work as well, right? People like sales, and they immediately think a guy in a plaid jacket selling a car that's trying to steal their money or something like that. And so you have to kind of get through some of that. And I think that marketing at some level is like, these are people that are trying to feed me a set of lies to part me with my money. Like there's a broader thing there. But you said something really important, which I want to come back to. I want to make sure people heard, which is you talked about emotional messaging, and then we talked a little bit about distribution and things like that. So there's art and science. So there's two things here. There's a place for people like David where this is about spreadsheets and fine tuning and technicalities and getting the right buys and the right ROI in the right places, and lining up the distribution and organization and operations. And there's an entire world and a universe there. And you can spend all your life, in that area, and that's the distribution part. And then there's the emotional side, which is where you are able to be a good storyteller to tell it. But then what I think is really helpful to know here is that when you're selling a product, at some level, so you're saying, Trey, you have some things that you're trying to monitor health-wise. You have some things that you're trying to get some better. You're trying to learn about your body more. You're trying to be able to live a healthier life. That allows you to be able to do the work that you do and take care of your family, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, people look at that and say, that's good. Trey wants to be healthier, take care of his family better. Well, now you have a product, this ring, that helps somebody do that, right? And so now there's two aspects of this. There's the aspect of, your career in marketing would be to figure out what that ring does that actually genuinely helps people to better take care of their health and those kinds of things. Now, I just want to pause and say that's an imperative step for people of faith, right? You have to have that first step. Is this Aura ring something that genuinely helps people do something that is good? Does it lead to human flourishing? Does it actually help somebody? Wow. And if the answer is yes, and I would say the answer is yes for this Aura ring, then it's like, okay, great. Well, then I know that I can deliver value to somebody. So now I have to craft a message that, and all the stuff that's going on would say, hey, there is something here that I'm offering. When I exchange this with you, you paying it is going to help me feed my family and my company continue to create more value and help people with their health and all that kind of thing. That's one side of the good equation. The other side of the good equation is you're going to get something that helps you with your health and taking care of yourself and your family and all those kinds of things. That's the other side of the equation. And I need to make sure that I craft an emotional message that catches your attention so you understand honestly, and those two words are really important. You understand honestly what's happening here. And then, coupled with somebody with David, must make sure that emotional message gets to people. That's what we're talking about. Correct. And so if you think about, when you say, I want to be a marketer, I want to get into marketing, I want to work in marketing, I would say, listen to what Trey said and then break this down and say that means you have a responsibility to find a company and organization doing something that answers that first question. Does this lead to human flourishing? And there's an infinite amount of those places. This is not a narrow band of things. There's all kinds of places that do that. And then your job is to honestly represent the value that your company that you represent is doing. And that's marketing. And I think that changes it from like this marketing with some of the weight. So no, this is storytelling. This is storytelling that leads to human flourishing.
Yeah, you demystified it. Another way to say it is marketers are in the value exchange business. There is this inherent value that they know a product or service has for the right person. And there is this realized value that person is going to get in their life when they have that experience. And it's our job to package that entire experience up in a compelling way and then distribute it to those people. That is ultimately the two sides of marketing. Now, the careful thing is, and I think the thing that in some ways, we've all had the plaid jacket experience, as you described it earlier. We've all had the bad experience of manipulative marketing. Like in our track, I teach them in the very first lecture, like messaging has two sides. There's two sides of the coin to messaging. There's manipulation and there's persuasion. Persuasion is done from a place of helping people make a decision for themselves. Manipulation is having made the decision for them and just trying to get them to come on, because you're trying to separate them from their money when you're doing manipulation. Persuasion is you're trying to help them understand that their life is going to improve. And the coin is very thin. I say that the veil on that skill is a very thin veil that, if you've ever taken the StrengthsFinders exam, my number one skill is woo, which is an acrostic for winning others over. Like, you put me in a room and you tell me there's something to sell, I'm going to come out of the room with the most sales. But I have to be careful, because there's the flesh side of that, and then there's the redemptive side of that, of using that gift that I was just a natural bent that God gave me in a way. And so for some of us, our line between manipulation and persuasion is even thinner than the general line. And I would just encourage people that there's a stewardship aspect inside of the marketing space of understanding that you are doing that dance between manipulation and persuasion with every word that you write, with every ad that you run, with every email that you send. And so there is a little bit of a maturity that I look for in people that say they want to get into this game, because if not, the truth of the matter is you can have a very lucrative career in this space, but there's a wrong way and a right way to be lucrative in this space. I think about it as being lucrative in my impact, lucrative in the just the generosity of the networking of people together, not always feeling like it has to always go through me and there's got to be some compensation in there. But there are plenty for every, and for every one of me that's trying to do it that way and genuinely trying to do it that way, there's 10 that are going like, no. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Like, so I will say every industry has its pros and its cons. And just, if you pursuing this industry, understanding digital marketing there is a level of manipulation that must be spoken out against. It must be pushed back on. And there's a way to carry ourselves as ultimately light bearers in this space, to do it with honor and still be really good at it. I tell people when they work with Harold that it is our personal goal for them to feel like they got Hollywood grade, but it was Holy Word made. Like we are working from a place of integrity, but we don't want to sacrifice doing great work. We need solid, talented, Jesus loving, but really challenged people in this space that are like, man, we just want to go be good at it and really work hard. Is what we're trying to do at Harold. And the truth is, man, it's a lot of fun. Like getting to do this work, getting to solve these problems. Yeah, even in the face of catastrophe, like I hate what happened to TP USA in the last 7 days. What happened to Charlie Kirk, it devastated our family. And the marketing team at Turning Point USA right now has a new level of platform to steward in light of what happened that they didn't have before. And they were already a phenomenally burgeoning organization. I mean, 32,000 chapter requests have come in now in the last 8 days. What a ride. You know, that's a lot of messaging work to figure out and a lot of distribution to figure out. And so I don't know, even those unexpected hard moments can turn into incredible amounts of opportunity, but people just have to understand there's a veil there, and we got to be careful with the veil.
Yeah, I think a really key part of what you're saying here is that you're saying that it's extremely important to see that you're not marketing to just numbers on a spreadsheet. Like it's so easy if you have that mentality of what's the most I can get out of it to just view the people that you're marketing to as just leads and just potential sales numbers and to just dehumanize them that way. It's so easy to do that. But what I'm hearing in what you're saying is that no, we need to keep in mind that these are real people that we are trying to solve problems for. We're wanting to, as Jonathan put it, like create flourishing for these people. We want to make their lives better. And I think that's a really big differentiator that I think you've illustrated beautifully, is that just the difference between looking at it as, you know, this is just a person who I'm just trying to get them to buy something versus like, this is somebody who I want to make their life better. How can I go about this? How can I communicate the value that this can bring to their life and create something that will make their life better for them, and just do our best to communicate that and to create trust in that as well. There's a huge difference when you can see visibly in a company the difference between those approaches, and you can see this company is not just out here looking at me as a potential number. They see me as somebody who they want to earn my trust, and that's a huge factor. And so I really appreciate you breaking that down.
If you're listening to this and you think, well, this marketing thing sounds really interesting, and you've got any kind of hesitation over this thin veil that Trey's talking about, which I think you did a really good job illustrating, I think I can actually bring it down to a tighter focus and say, you know, people that stay on the right side of that are people that are willing to ask the question that we talked about earlier: does this help people? And then the second thing they do is they are willing to ask the question, and am I willing to ask and find out if this is a person I can help? Right? So in other words, back to Trey's ring, does it help people? Okay, yes, it helps people. Does it help every person? Well, the answer is always no. Right? It doesn't help every person. There's not universal products out there. And so then you have to ask the next serious question, well, who does it help? And now your marketing is, are you willing to ask the initial question, does this help somebody? Yes or no? Does this lead to human flourishing? And here's a distinction I would make. Selling an Aura ring to people leads to human flourishing. Selling a gambling, package to somebody to come to go to casino, I don't care what anybody tells you. At the end result of that is broken people, right? And so that's there's a lot of money there. There's a lot of creativity there. There's a lot of things you can do there. And that's just not going to lead to human flourishing. So that'd be the first thing. But the second thing would be like, okay, well, which people does it help? And so you add to that. And then are you willing to ask the question so you know which people you're talking to? And if you are then in that subset of people that you know that your product helps people, and these are the people your product helps, now it's about crafting a message for those people because you're going to serve them. But it allowed the fact that you're going to have other people that you're going to run to and say, this doesn't work. And we can use Unbound as an example, right? Is Unbound a great program that helps people? Yes, undoubtedly. All three of us think so, right? Does it help every person? Absolutely not. There are some people that this is a really bad match for. In fact, we might even say there's a lot of people this is a really bad match for. So we have to say, we know that we're marketing something that works. Now we have to figure out who it works for. Now when we talk to people, we have to find out, are you in that camp? And if you are, we're going to turn our entire marketing attention to you because we want you in here because we can help you and you can help us, right? And if you're not, we want to say, hey, fantastic. Let me help you, guide you to something that does help you. And we're fine with that. And that's where the faith part comes in. We're fine with that for a couple of reasons. One, because that's how you treat fellow image bearers. And two, because we trust God brings us the right people, right? And so it's not all, I mean, the marketing job is important, but also it's important for us to faithfully steward what we have and deliver that to the right people. So Trey, when you think about marketing, and especially as we wrap up here, and just the kinds of people you hire for Herald, we sort of talked about this in broad categories. We talked about the artistic side and the science side, but just name some categories. Like what are the kinds of skill sets that you hire for, so people get a sort of a broad idea of when we say I'm going to get into marketing, what does that encompass?
Well, let's talk about the who they are in their core before we talk about the skills they look for. So I would say they're naturally curious people. People that aren't naturally curious cannot have a long-standing career in marketing, and they're curious in both directions. They're curious when it works and when it doesn't. Like a lot of people find it very easy to be curious when something doesn't go the way you want. They're like, I wonder why that happened. But really great marketers are the ones that lean in when it goes well, and they figure out exactly why. They ask the right questions. They're curious around why it went well, and then they're able to repackage that. That's a story for another day. But I mean, I had one campaign structure that I unlocked in 2014 and then ran it for 30 different companies, and it worked every single time because I got curious, and it changed the trajectory of my career. So naturally curious people, I would say that's a soft skill. On the harder skill side of things, good with words. I think even the more technically driven marketers at the end of the day understand good words versus bad words, meaning they can recognize decent copy versus weak copy. I think that's a must-have skill. I think it is a skill that can be learned or cultivated over time, but I also think there's a lot of natural storyteller in you that just kind of comes out to have a long-standing career in marketing. I'll say the third thing is that they have an elastic mind. Like what I mean by that is there's a certain level of resilience that they carry as a person, as a skill, that they understand that all marketing is, at the end of the day, is a series of experiments. Period. Doesn't matter. And so you have to carry a resilience, a test and see, partly because maybe not even in part, maybe mostly because we all function on platforms we don't actually control. And so therefore your elasticity in your mind has to be there because the algorithms can change underneath you overnight, and what was working might not work anymore. And so there has to be that kind of bounce back nature in the person to be able to stick and stay in this space. So if they're curious, they're halfway decent with words, and they're able to bounce back pretty well, all of the other channel-based stuff, social media, paid media buying, email marketing, and all of that can be learned. I am a living testimony of that. I'm 100% self-taught. I mean, I took a couple of courses, went to a couple of conferences, but I'm 16 years of trial and error and having a really good bounce back muscle in me and being undeterred. And I would say I've been a spoken word poet since I was 11 years old. It's kind of an interesting little sidebar thing that I do. So I always had a fascination for words and how they fit together and how people respond to the emotion of words. Everything else is learned at that point. So those would be the core things in a human that I'm looking for. Like when I'm interviewing, yeah, I check their resumes and what have you done and all this kind of, but I'm really looking for those qualities because I just know that's what it's going to take to really be successful.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for coming in and for talking a little bit about this. If you want to learn more about marketing and if you want to do some of that self-education, Trey has a great podcast called the 10-Minute Masterclass. And so, Trey, you want to talk anything about that or tell us a little bit about how we can find more about you if you're interested in following up some marketing stuff?
You nailed it. I drop a 10-minute episode every Tuesday morning. We just finished season 1, so we're on a 3-week break right now. Then season 2 is, because it's 2, I'm actually going to put the 40 or 50 brightest minds that I know in marketing and interview a new person for 10 minutes every Tuesday. I think somebody could go listen to the 34 episodes that I dropped during season 1. And my promise with that podcast is I don't hold anything back. Like if it's the best idea I have on the topic, I've shared it in the podcast. I believe that is the greatest value exchange. Otherwise, if you want to see my writings, I write a lot about marketing on LinkedIn. I'm the only Trey Shinneman on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. Otherwise, I'm not very active on social media. And then the last thing I will say is I got a book. Let me get it on the camera. I got a book coming out in January of 2026. I've been working on it for a year and a half, and it's an end-to-end explanation of how to think like a modern CMO has to think in today's world in light of doing solid research, what AI means for now and for going forward, how to understand your customer better, how to understand your product better. I think that's probably the heaviest work that people, again, anyone can learn the channels, but if you don't learn how to think well and function well in this space, you're just going to go create noise. And that's ultimately why I wrote that book. So hopefully you can buy the book on Amazon when it comes out in January. I don't know when this episode is going to drop, but January 2026, it'll be on Amazon.
Well, the good news here is if he's the only Trey Shenneman on LinkedIn, there's not a lot of them out there. So just make sure you remember his name. You can search for it on Amazon starting in January and hopefully find the book. You can find the podcast right now. But if you really want to get the best out of Trey Shenneman, you could also join the Ascend program and join the digital marketing track, and that would work as well. So
That's right.
Trey, thanks very much. We really appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the work we've got to do with you and the work we continue to do with you, and looking forward to whatever comes next.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. And hey, I hope to see you in the track. Come on. It's a lot of fun. It'll change your life.
Well, as I said, we had a fun conversation with Trey, and this was a good time. But it also, I felt like, there's an aspect here of this is what it means to be a marketer. This is how you get into marketing. This is how you get into the career. And that's really important. But to me, the part that was more exciting and more interesting was what marketing means. And so, David, I know you spend a lot of time thinking about this, but there's such opportunity here. And it's always sort of frustrating for us to see people kind of be scared of it because it's got this taint that sort of lingers from, obviously some bad experiences people have had. And yet there is so much opportunity to do good in this world if you learn some great marketing skills.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it is a very powerful tool. And like any powerful tool, it can be used to create phenomenally good results and to bring about a lot of, as we put it, human flourishing and just like benefit people. But it also has been used to create a lot of really harmful things and to deceive people. And so, yeah, that's why it has a really bad reputation. And so I think it's really refreshing to be able to hear from somebody like Trey who's able to recognize the power that it has and say, hey, like, if you're going to be getting into this, like, this is something that should carry some weight and some responsibility to it. And I think that's true really in just about any career field that you're in, which is something that we've talked about on some previous episodes, is that really in any career field where indirectly or indirectly you are making a difference in somebody's life through the product or the service that you are working on, you have a responsibility to do that well. And especially as believers, our goal is in our work and through our work to glorify God and to bring about flourishing for the people that he has put us around. And so I think it's just really great to see somebody who takes that very seriously in a field where very few people do.
So I teach a class for our challenge students, that's second-year students in our Ascend program. And the class is called Tactical Communications. And we read through some books, some of them popular books that you would see even on the Amazon bestseller, popular business book type things. And then we read through some really obscure ones and some older ones. And they're all about, obviously, communication. And it comes in different ways. We read a book called Tactics, and that's about sharing, apologetics type stuff. But then we read some books about negotiation. We read some books about communicating in conflict. We read some books about marketing and pitching things. And what's immediately apparent is that each of those books, all four of those books that we use, has some aspect that if you read it and you just have a little bit of imagination, you go, I could use this differently. Like there is a little danger in teaching people because these are tactics that are very powerful. They understand how human psychology works and why people do things they do. And you could use them both directions. And so we spend a lot of time in the class talking about, now that you know this, it's both a defense in case you have somebody using it against you, but it's also an opportunity for you to serve and help others. But it would also be an opportunity for you to manipulate and cheat other people. And so, you have to use that wisely. And so there's an interesting aspect there. But in that communications course, we talk about the reality that while people do use logic, and logic is not inconsequential in the human experience, they almost always use logic after emotion. In other words, there's an emotional connection, an emotional attachment, an emotional trigger that then puts you down the logical path. But there's an emotional thing first. And Trey talked about this in our interview. And I just we didn't get a chance to circle back to it so much in the interview, so I wanted to circle back to it here and let people know that at the heart of reality is that people are emotional. They're built for relationships, and relationships ride on emotion, right? And so there's an emotional catch that all of us get started at an emotional connection point, and then we make some logical, rational decisions. It's not that logic and rationality aren't a thing, but it's normally a post-emotional reaction thing. And so to understand that is to know how to communicate well. It's also to market well, because market at some level is communication. And so to understand that and to realize that that's the reality is important for everybody. But it's also important then to know that at some level, you could say that all of life is storytelling. All of life is kind of getting this emotional connection. And you can get emotional connection to bad ideas, and you can get emotional connections to good ideas. And there's a mystery there that is a bigger theological discussion, but there's a mystery there that reality exists. And so I say all that to just give a little bit of a plea here that if you're listening to this and you're serious about your faith and you're trying to figure out what you're doing with your future, or you're trying to think about what to do next, realize that at some level that we're in a world that is desperate for good emotional storytellers who are telling the stories about good ideas. And if you are interested in that, there is not just opportunity from a career side, there is a call, a need for that in terms of how you can help your world be a better place. Well, if you're interested in apprenticing with Trey, then definitely you want to go to beunbound.us and check out our Ascend program, and specifically the digital marketing track. You can learn more about what Ascend is and what we do, as well as the digital marketing track at beunbound.us. And until we talk to you next time, be unbound.